The Eagles roll to their second victory. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the H&S Septic Services Brock Eagle Football Show. As the Eagles dominate Lake Worth 67-7, and I'm going to be honest with you, we're not going to talk a ton about that game. There's just not a lot to talk about in it. A dominating win from the start. Once again, Holt Frazier, 195 yards, 5 touchdowns through the air. Colt Matlock, 3 catches for 132 yards and 3 scores. Just a dominating performance on the ground. Levi Dean with 100 and a touchdown. Brian McDonald, 83 and a touchdown. Dash Lindsey, 74 and a touchdown. The defense had a bounce back game. And to be fair, we all know that Lake Worth doesn't have the talent that Decatur has offensively, even if Decatur's young, but still a good bounce back dominating win. A dominating performance by the defense. Well, up next will be Aubrey, and this is going to be an interesting one. I think Brock wins, but last year that game was mucky for a little bit, and the way Aubrey plays with that ground game, and they're going to try to play keep away with you, and they'll go for it on 4th and 1s a lot and try to keep the ball away, and they're happy to take 3 and 4 yards, and so this will be another good test and a different style test for the Brock Eagle defense and for the Brock Eagle offense, because if the defense can't get Aubrey off the field, then we'll have to see the Brock offense with patience, as they might not have as many snaps that they normally would in a normal game. We want to thank our sponsor, Mike Kilburn of H&S Septic Services. You can give them a call, 682-214-6003, or you can find them online at hssepticservicetx.com. For all your septic services needs, you get a 1-year labor warranty. They honor almost every manufacturer warranty, and there's also discounts. He's going to help you in your time of need find a way to afford, because I grew up in the country, man. I know how the septic services, and when things go bad, they go bad quick. And he'll take care of you there, serving Parker, Hood counties, and really all surrounding counties. So even if you're not in Parker or Hood, give him a call, and if he can get out to you, he will. Also, the Optimist Football Club that Mike runs, we're going to start having all that stats and information here soon, just waiting for the season to get rolling. But we're going to try to have it to where we can announce a player of the week and give standings and bring Mike on a couple times to talk about where the league is and stuff. So we'll be having more information on that coming soon. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, it is the head coach of the Brock Eagles, Coach Billy Mathis, right here on L4 Media. Here at L4 Media, we talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. And you can see it all on our YouTube channel at L4 Media Company. Like and subscribe. Terry Bennett back here on the Brock Eagle Football Show. Now joined by the head coach, Coach Billy Mathis. And, Coach, you go to 2-0. You thump Lake Worth 67-7. What were your thoughts on the game?
I was proud of the boys for, of course, for their fight coming out, but I was more proud of them. We were up big at halftime, and we went in there at halftime, and nobody was acting like the game was over. They got a very mature group of guys. They were in there. We were going through, some of the stuff that they had done and some of the stuff that we did, and, getting it kind of dialed up of what we needed to fix. And, man, everybody was they were still chomping at the bit on getting back out there ready to go. Nobody was in the locker room, goofing around or acting like, like they shouldn't. And that's really what probably made me the most proud of the team. How it all happened, and, to go and finish the game and to play with class, and Lake Worth played hard and played classy. So, the score was, big, and, I think we ran 40 plays offensively, and I think Holt was like 6 of 9, and 5 of those were touchdowns. And, you get into games like that, and there's been times in the past, you got every offensive lineman like, hey, let me run the ball. Or, they want to start kind of getting goofy, clowny around, start acting like, not playing a game, and everybody wants to touch the ball. I get that. But I didn't have any of that last Friday night, and I was so excited about that. I was like, hey, guys, stay dialed in. Man, they were dialed in for 4 quarters. So that's what made me most proud.
Well, and as you and I have talked about over the shows, and then just you and I off the air, this is one of your youngest teams as far as returning starters. And yes, a lot of these guys got a lot of snaps, but now they're the leaders. And so I guess the question is, it's kind of fun, isn't it, to see what their reactions are? It's kind of new.
It is fun, man. Got a whole bunch of new guys, besides Colt, really. A whole bunch of new starters over there on offense and on defense. Defensively, we'd given up 31 points or so to Decatur the week before, and there's a lot of pride into not giving up a touchdown, trying to pitch a shutout, and for us to be able to go out there and hold a team like Lake Worth to just 7 points, man, I was excited for them, and they were excited about it, and offensively to go out and execute the way we did, watching the excitement in their eyes and the way they came off, and the way they were on the sideline. There was as much energy on the sideline as there was out there on the field. And that's just everybody being dialed in. It's everybody being all in. And we talk about it a lot. We talk about what does it take to be great? Well, it takes everybody pulling the rope in the same direction, rowing the boat in the same direction, all those things. Takes us all to go in there and to come together as one. And we talk about it all the time. I heard John Gruden say, one dude can get out there with a sledgehammer and beat on that giant rock, and it may take years to chip away, but when you get a full team out there pounding the rock together, you can do great things, and you can do great things fast. And that's the way the guys are right now. Their mentality, hey, what are we going to do? We're going to get out there and we're going to pound this rock. We're going to get out there and do it together as a team and be excited for everybody, no matter who's getting the accolades or the awards, or all the calls up there, coming from the press box. They're just excited to be part of a great team.
Well, you bring up a good thing, and it kind of carries off of a conversation you were having before we started recording. And we won't name the teams, but we were talking about how in a certain game that we both had seen some highlights from, one sideline was engaged and just into it and celebrating, but also keeping focus. And then the other sideline was kind of asleep. And I think people don't realize how important that sideline being that way is for the success of a program.
It is. I mean, it's just like having a great crowd behind you. There's electricity that's coming from the sideline and from the stands, from the student section, from the bands, from the guys who aren't in. There's an electricity that gets on you and gets out there on that field. And man, when it's everybody's cranked up and everybody's fired up and everybody's getting after it over there on the side, it brings something out there on that field. So when you come off the sideline, you're going out there on that field and you hear all that roar behind you and you just feel it. Man, it gets you excited. It makes you want to go out there and play harder. It keeps your adrenaline going. Nobody can get excited about, a bunch of people sitting on their hands like you're at some golf match or something, right? I mean, the golf clap's great for a golf match, but for a football game, you want everybody, you want it to be like WWE. Everybody out there raising Cain, everybody out there being excited, blowing the horns, the band pumping, the cheerleaders screaming, kids and parents out there, rocking those stands. That's what, that energy, it goes a long ways. And, that's the whole purpose of home field advantage. When you're at your home field and you got thousands of people at your game, that energy getting on the field is wonderful and it's great. And it gives you some momentum going into a game.
All right, well, let's talk about this week's opponent. Both you and I feel that Aubrey is one of those teams that kind of gets lost in the shuffle because of the district and the region they're in. But this is a very talented Chaparral team, if not a little too young right now.
No, they are. They're very talented. And, just like us a couple of years ago, people kept talking about us and, it's one of the best 0-2 teams around. I feel the same way about Aubrey. Coach Ivy and their group of coaches are they're awesome. And I know they're always getting them ready. They have one of the best offensive lines that I've seen in years. And the way they run the ball, man, they're getting downhill and they're getting downhill fast. And, quarterback does a great job, managing out there. They got great receivers, quarterbacks throwing the ball out there, just giving the receivers a chance. Defensively, they're flying around. They line up in a defense a lot like ours, a lot of four-man front stuff. And they just go out there and they'll play base defense, and they are just coming off the ball. It's going to be a battle down in the trenches this week. And the team that wins that, is probably going to win the football game because I think our offensive line and defensive line is very good, and their offensive line and defensive line is very good. So, it's going to be a war down there.
Well, and you talk about they're going to primarily run the ball, and this is a team that, if you're not careful and you look up and they've held the ball for 7 minutes and they're going for it on 4th and 1s, you could easily get behind the scoreboard, even if you're playing better.
You're right, and your natural instincts are to like, oh my gosh, they've had the ball so long, we finally got it, and your natural instincts are to press and try to make something happen fast instead of being patient. And that's where I think Aubrey does great. They do a great job of being patient. 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards at a time. We've got to do a great job of getting them off the field. On 3rd down, we've got to make them have a 3rd and long. We've got to win 1st down. All the things that you need to do to stop a team that runs the ball and rushes the ball so well. And you're right. And we got to go take advantage of our offensive series. You can't go out there and have a bad offensive series and give them the ball right back. So there's a lot that goes into this. And, the biggest deal is those guys getting in there and winning the line of scrimmage.
Last question. Kind of want to turn away from the actual football field. It's been a rough few months for older Texas legend coaches. Jerry Bennett from Jefferson, East Texas legend, passed away. Of course, Coach G.A. Moore of Salina, Pilot Point fame, passed away. And then a couple of days ago, former Sam Houston, Arlington Sam Houston head coach Kenneth Ozeep also passed away. So I wanted to ask you, who was the coach, or was it multiple coaches? Who was it that got you not only into football, but into I want to coach the sport?
Early on, of course, it was my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, my dad, he was a young dad. My dad was 18. My parents were 18 when I was born. So, I had this, when you're growing up, you don't realize your dad's young until you go to class and teacher's like, how old's your dad? And you're like, 24. And they're like, no, yeah, I thought that's your brother. But my dad was the one who, pee-wee football, pee-wee baseball, basketball. It didn't matter what we did. We were playing a sport, and my dad, he was this big giant, he tied rebar, he tied steel, he's a construction worker. So it was always, and he was so great. And, he'd get home from working all day and he'd just be filthy from head to toe. But I'd get home, and we were doing something in the backyard, whether it's taking grounders or, throwing footballs or tackling, old punching bags and stuff that he had set up on the back porch. So it was my dad that got me into it. And, of course, the other dads that coached Pee Wee, my buddy's dads, that got us going. And then once we got into middle school, and we had a new head coach, our 7th grade year, 8th grade year, 9th grade year. We had a new head coach every year, so we really never had an off season. Then Coach Buchanan came in at the end of my freshman year, and, we started coming in. So Coach Buck was, the quote-unquote real coach that really got me to want to be a coach. He and a guy named Mike Cheverini. Mike Cheverini was our linebacker coach. And so, Coach Buck was the head coach and, did it all. Of course, we all loved him because he was this larger-than-life, guy. And then you had Coach Cheverini, who was my linebacker coach, but also was my baseball coach. And those two guys, man, they did a ton for me of wanting to be a coach, not only by the way they pushed me, because they pushed me and I was a hammerhead at times. And thank God they, they took care of me. And there was a lot of sled pushes and a lot of stuff that I had to do in high school, but they held me accountable. And I'm so thankful for that now, that they didn't just, let me get by with stupid stuff that I did. They held me accountable. They disciplined me when I needed discipline. And it changed who I was, and it's not that I was a bad kid, but, understanding what it takes to go out and do the right thing all the time and that you're always being watched. But those two guys were huge in my life of wanting to get into the coaching profession.
All right, one more actual question because I just thought of this. If you were not coaching, what do you think you would be doing right now?
Man, gosh, besides like a big-time country singer, I tell the boys all the time, I say, gosh almighty, boys, I could be getting ready to go out to a big show or something right now. If I wasn't, I would definitely be into I love real estate. I love land development. I love home building stuff like that. You know, my wife and I, of course, as a coach, you know, we've moved like 10 times.
Yeah.
And of those 10 times, I had chances to buy houses and you know, help build, you know, build houses with builders and stuff like that. I really love that type of stuff. So it'd be some sort of real estate or land development type of stuff.
Here at L4 Media, we talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. And you can see it all on our YouTube channel at L4 Media Company. Like and subscribe. As always, I want to thank Coach Billy Mathis for joining us. Country singer. I tell you what, if Brock wins state this year, we should start a GoFundMe and write some songs and have Coach Mathis drop a country album. We'll put it on, what was that, Soundwave or whatever? Always love talking to him. It's, you know, we talked about it with Aubrey. It's going to be a game of who imposes their will. I think Brock will, of course. But again, last year that game got a little mucky. And then it got, you know, Brock eventually kind of stepped on the gas and made it look a lot better. I think it was 38-13, 38-14, something like that. But yeah, they definitely, with that offensive line, most of that offensive line was back from last year. And they're big boys. And they're a really good 4A Division I team that just happens to be trapped in the toughest district in 4A Division I, with Salina, with Panther Creek, with Sulphur Springs. All those three teams are all region favorites. And then you've got a team like Paris, who is really, really athletic and can be a little bit up and down. But when you get good Paris, they can beat anybody in the state. And then you got a team like this with Aubrey, who doesn't have the athleticism of Paris, but they're more consistent. And they can beat anybody in the state, especially if they start holding that ball for 7-8 minutes per quarter. So this is going to be a very intriguing game. Do not be surprised if this score is closer than what people think. Again, I want to thank HS Septic Services for being sponsor, Mike Hilburn, Optimus Football Club as well. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, you can email the show, terry@s2ssport.com. I think the competition of the week should be email me what would Coach Billy Mathis's first country song title be. Let me know, terry@s2ssport.com. Until next time, this is the Brock Eagle Coaching Show, brought to you by H&S Septic Services, right here on L4 Media.